The last time someone's offhand comment ruined your entire afternoon, your brain was handing you a map to the exact wound that's been running your decisions, your relationships, and your self-image for years. Most people crumple that map up and throw it away. They call the other person toxic, vent to a friend, and move on. And the wound keeps driving. Think about what actually happens in your body when you get triggered. Your chest tightens, your jaw locks, a heat rises through your torso, and your thoughts start looping on the same sentence someone said to you, playing it back with increasing hostility. You rehearse what you should have said. You build a case for why they're wrong. The whole machinery spins up in seconds, and the intensity of it, the sheer disproportionate force of your reaction, is the clue everyone ignores. Because proportionate responses don't hijack your nervous system for 3 hours. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you shrug, that's a proportionate response. When a coworker gives you mild feedback and you spend the rest of the day composing arguments in the shower, something older got activated. Something that has very little to do with the coworker. So what's actually firing? Every emotional trigger is a reactivation of an older experience that never got fully processed. The brain stores incomplete emotional events differently than resolved ones. Resolved memories sit in long-term storage, accessible but calm. Unresolved ones stay in a kind of emotional short-term memory, loaded and ready, waiting for any input that pattern matches the original wound. Your coworker's tone matched your father's. Your partner's silence matched to the loneliness of being overlooked as a kid. The match doesn't need to be exact. A 30% resemblance is enough for the brain to fire the full original response. This is why triggers feel so wildly out of proportion. You're reacting to every accumulated instance at once, compressed into a single moment. The present just pulled the thread, and the entire tapestry. No, the present pulled the thread, and years of identical moments came flooding through the same narrow opening. That's the overwhelm. That's the heat. And most people spend their entire lives managing the heat without ever asking what's underneath it. The instinct to manage makes sense. The discomfort is real. Breathing techniques help. Walking away helps. Journaling helps. All of these regulate the nervous system in the moment, and that matters. But regulation without investigation is like icing a broken bone. The swelling goes down. The fracture stays. What would investigation actually look like? Start with the disproportionate reactions, the ones where, if you're honest, your response didn't fit the situation. A friend cancels plans, and you feel abandoned. A stranger on the internet disagrees with you, and your hands are shaking. Your partner forgets to text back, and suddenly the relationship feels unsafe. Each of these gaps between stimulus and response is a doorway. Walk through it by asking one question. When did I first feel exactly this way? The answer usually surfaces fast. Sometimes it's a specific memory. Sometimes it's a feeling tone, a body sensation you recognize from childhood without being able to attach it to a single event. Both are valid entry points. The memory gives you narrative. The body sensation gives you something deeper, direct access to the stored experience itself. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. The goal isn't to fix the feeling. The goal is to feel it completely, the way you couldn't when it first happened. Most emotional wounds form in moments when the full experience was too much for the system to process. A 5-year-old can't metabolize the grief of feeling invisible to a parent. A teenager can't fully process the humiliation of public rejection. So the brain does something efficient and brutal. It walls off the unprocessed portion and moves on. You survived, but the walled-off fragment stays active, scanning for threats that resemble the original event, firing alarm signals every time it finds one. Every trigger is that fragment saying, "I'm still here. I'm still unfinished." The therapeutic traditions have different names for this. Somatic therapists call it trapped activation. Psychodynamic therapists call it repressed affect. Internal family systems calls it an exile. The language varies. The mechanism is the same. An emotional experience got interrupted before completion, and the system keeps trying to complete it by recreating similar situations. This is why you keep dating the same type of person, why you keep having the same argument with different people, why certain dynamics at work feel unbearable while your colleagues shrug them off. Your system is trying to re-enter the original scene, hoping this time you'll stay present long enough to finish what got interrupted, and every time you numb it, distract from it, or explain it away as someone else's fault, the cycle resets. The people who trigger you the most are doing you an uncomfortable favor. They're pressing on the exact spot that needs attention. A secure person hearing the same words would feel mild irritation at most. The fact that you feel devastated, enraged, or panicked means the words landed on a bruise that was already there. The other person didn't create the bruise, they revealed it. This reframe changes everything about conflict. Instead of asking, "Why did they do that to me?" the more useful question becomes, "What in me was available to be activated?" Both questions are valid. Boundaries still matter. Some people genuinely are harmful, and you should distance yourself. But even in those cases, the intensity of your reaction contains information about your own unfinished business. You can hold someone accountable and investigate your own wound at the same time. These aren't competing actions. Now, there's a version of this message that gets weaponized. You're only upset because of your own issues. That's a manipulation tactic, and it deserves to be called out. Telling someone their pain is entirely self-generated is gaslighting. The distinction matters. Your trigger response contains information about your history, and the other person's behavior can be genuinely problematic. Both are true simultaneously. Dismissing either one is a shortcut that leads nowhere good. But when you're safe, when the immediate situation has passed, sitting with the residue of a trigger is some of the most productive inner work available. Because the trigger already did the hard part. It located the wound. It brought the unconscious material to the surface. All you have to do is stay with it instead of running. Staying with it feels terrible. Your whole system is built to move away from this sensation. That's the design working as intended. The wall went up to protect you. Approaching it deliberately feels like walking toward danger. The body doesn't distinguish between "I'm re-experiencing a childhood wound in a safe therapeutic context" and the original threat is happening again. So you'll feel the urge to shut down, intellectualize, get angry, change the subject, check your phone. Each of those impulses is the protective system doing its job. Thank it, then stay anyway. What happens when you stay is hard to describe from the outside. The sensation peaks, it moves, it often changes location in the body. Chest tightness becomes throat pressure, becomes a wave behind the eyes. Tears sometimes come. Sometimes anger comes first, then grief underneath the anger. The layers are specific to the wound and they unfold in their own order. Your only job is to remain present while they move. After, sometimes minutes, sometimes over multiple sessions, the charge around the original memory starts to dissolve. The memory stays, the facts don't change, but the electrical fence around it powers down. You can think about the event without your body going into alarm. You can encounter similar situations in the present and respond from the current moment instead of from the archived past. This is what people mean when they talk about doing the work. The phrase gets thrown around so casually it's almost meaningless, but the actual experience is specific and physical. It's sitting in a feeling you've been running from, possibly for decades, and discovering that the feeling has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That it moves through you if you let it. That the wall you built to contain it was taking more energy to maintain than the feeling itself ever required. The triggers don't stop completely. New ones surface as older layers resolve, because the system finally has bandwidth to bring up material it was holding in queue. Think of it as a waiting room. The most urgent wounds got seen first, but there are others sitting quietly in the back, patient, holding their number. Each resolved trigger makes the next one easier to approach. The process becomes familiar, the fear of feeling decreases, the gap between stimulus and response widens, and in that widening gap, you start to notice something. The choices available to you multiply. Where you used to have one response, react, you now have space to pause, space to choose, space to respond from who you are now with the full resources of an adult nervous system, rather than from who you were at 5 or 12 or 17, when the original wound was still fresh and the world was too big to metabolize. Your triggers are a list written in sensation and heat of every piece of unfinished emotional business you carry. Most people treat that list as a problem. A few learn to read it as a curriculum.